Hello listeners, and welcome to another Cult News Update. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, or head over to patreon.com/the Cult Vault to find ad-free and exclusive content. Now on to today's news. An article on Yahoo News by Nick Shager reveals that HBO's The Vow, an expose documentary on NXIVM featuring key members and the abuses they experienced, is receiving a part 2, which will air on October the 17th. It's a follow-up series on the case since Ranieri's 120-year prison sentence commenced, and will include interviews with some of Ranieri's most staunch defenders and perhaps in some cases co-conspirators. Part 2, as with Part 1, will include appearances from co-hosts of the A Little Bit Culty podcast, Sarah Edmondson, author of the memoir Scarred, and her husband Anthony Ames. Mark Vicente has also just dropped his own podcast, WTF is on my mind, and he will also be featured in part 2 of The Vow. And perhaps we will even see friend of the Cult Vault podcast and expert, Janja Lalich. Nadia Komamai for TheGuardian.com has written about the cult of Harry Styles, trying to work out how an X Factor superstar has turned Gen Z cult of personality. Recently, Styles has appeared in more films and released new music which is breaking box office and chart records across America and the UK. Within the article, it claims that since his army of followers have grown up with Harry and have been seen camping for days leading up to any of Styles' appearances at one event or another, that fans fully support his involvement in things like the Black Lives Matter movement and his outspokenness on the LGBTQIA+ community. The article claims that Styles brings a more fluid approach to gender identity, which is something the Gen Z community are more familiar with. Perhaps a cult of personality or a cult following, but not necessarily any cause for concern here regarding cults in this article. British treasure, actress and Dame Angela Lansbury of Murder, She Wrote fame passed away on the 11th of October, aged 96. Born in 1925, Lansbury lived through the 60s and 70s, raising teenage children throughout this time, which has been particularly prevalent when, according to an article on Variety.com by Zach Scharf, Lansbury had to take drastic action to prevent her daughter from falling into the clutches of notorious cult leader Charles Manson. A 2014 interview with Mail Online has resurfaced since Lansbury's death, where she talked about saying, "It started with cannabis but moved on to heroin. There were factions up in the hills above Malibu that were dedicated to deadly pursuits. It pains me to say it, but at one stage, Deirdre was in with a crowd led by Charles Manson. She was one of many youngsters who knew him, and they were fascinated. He was an extraordinary character, charismatic in many ways, no question about it." Lansbury goes on to explain that she uprooted herself and her family and moved over to Cork Island. And who knows what Lansbury's daughter Deirdre could have been complicit in had she stayed under the influence of Charlie Manson. An article on verdict.co.uk by Eric Johansson talks about the SpaceX and now Twitter owner Elon Musk and how his cult of personality might be wearing off. The article details that on Musk's journey to become the richest man in the world, he has amassed a following that seemed unwavering. However, after SpaceX fired 5 employees last week, an open letter has circulated criticising Musk and the workplace culture of the company, detailing for hopes that the workplace will become more inclusive. It has been said that the 5 employees were fired for intimidation and bullying, but these rapid terminations are impacting Musk and his image. Hawaiian native and former US Army Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard is picking up traction as an American politician with controversial thoughts and opinions on Trump being, quote, a bitch, the LGBT community, speeches that include comments on Ukrainians not being worthy of US support, and quitting the Democratic Party recently for being, quote, an elitist cabal of warmongers. An article on the Economic Times details how Gabbard's aunt recently came forward to talk about how Tulsi Gabbard is part of a secretive cult named the Science of Identity Foundation, where the members are loyal to a cloistered guru named Chris Butler. The Science of Identity Foundation, or SIF, is an offshoot of an already controversial movement, the Hare Krishnas, formerly known as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. According to the article, most of SIF's teachings are lethally homophobic, anti-Islamic and misogynistic. The members are forced to worship Butler, who is considered a god. An arrest warrant has been issued for former cult leader and sex offender Raymond Lambert, ex-leader of the Grand Valley Independent Baptist Church, who was the subject of charges after allegedly repeatedly having sex with girls as young as 4 with the help of his wife Patty Lambert, as part of some so-called ceremony. This case took place in August 2006, but there has been a new appeal lately with a fresh arrest warrant issued for allegations of rape. Although this article is not available to view on my laptop, I could look at it on my phone, so I'll post the link in the description for anybody that's interested in this case. And lastly today, Kanye West has opened a new Christian-based school which is shrouded in mystery but already under scrutiny. An article on onlysky.com by Hemant Mehta details that parents of pupils are expected to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Full school worship will take place every day with no indication on public record on the type of Christianity being taught at the school. West was quoted saying they're attempting to take prayers out of school. And so it is thought, at least within this article, that West's school, the Donda Academy in California, may take a more right-wing stance on theology, teachings, education, politics, and who knows what else. And that is the roundup of cult news for today. And if you have enjoyed this video or found it informative or interesting, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my YouTube channel, or head over to patreon.com/The Cult Vault to find ad-free and exclusive content. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.